Religion is what we believe. Spirituality is what we are. Welcome to Path to Peace with Todd Perlmutter. I'm your host, Todd Perlmutter. Our world is a projection of our collective consciousness. The more peace we bring into our lives, the more peace we bring into this world. So let the transformation begin. We all have certain beliefs, and these beliefs affect our thoughts, our words, our actions, and our habits. What we believe about ourselves, what we believe about the universe, and what we believe about ourselves in relationship to the universe. These beliefs, especially when they come from religion, give us a sense of identity, a sense of community, a sense of hope and safety, and they give us the ceremonies and rituals that can make us present, that can free us from our normal thought stream and engage our mind in the direction towards our faith. When done correctly, religion is a doorway to our spiritual selves. These organized institutions create a blueprint and a framework for tapping into that spiritual dimension within us. They make tangible and personal that which is inexplicable and indescribable. It has the power to give our lives meaning, to give ourselves purpose, and where spirituality can remove all of that incessant content from our mind, religion can fill it with positive messages. It can not just stop our thinking, but it can guide our thinking towards benevolence, towards devotion, not just to a God, but to God's creation, to each other. It is filled with stories of morality, examples of virtues, and the stories can give us a sense of comfort in realizing that we are not alone, that others have struggled with what we are struggling with, and it can, through the stories, give us a roadmap through examples on how to get through tough times and circumstances in our lives. There is, without a doubt, physical, tangible benefits to believing that everything happens for a reason, that everything will work out, that everything is God's will, that we are protected and looked after by a loving God. This brings a sense of freedom, a sense of relief, which are all priceless, and that it gives us for free. At its most basic level, it can be nothing more than just one more thing to love, one more thing to put our faith in, our worries and doubts, one more thing to be grateful towards. And that gratitude and love are very real and very transformative. There was a study done on children that was very funny. And this study, done probably a decade or two ago, took two groups of children. And the first group, they would lead into a room, and it was a fun little game room for children. And they had a piece of tape on the ground and a dartboard hanging on the wall. And the children were told to stand behind the piece of tape and throw these little Velcro balls against the dartboard, and it would stick to the board. And the experimenter, the tester, the scientist, would leave the room while the children did this. So they'd give them a few balls, and the kids would throw the balls unsupervised against the dartboard. And then the experimenter would come back in and count up the score that the children got. And the first group of children, almost all of them, after the experimenter left the room, they would throw the balls, and then they would walk up to the wall and move the balls closer to the bullseye. Or they would pick a ball that they missed off the floor and put it in a nice spot on the board. So they were cheating. And that was the test that was going on in this first group. And the kids thought they were getting tested on how well they threw the balls at the dartboard, but they were really getting tested on this hidden camera that was in the room to see if they cheated or not. For the second group of children, there was a chair placed in the room next to the dartboard. And as each child came into the room, as they were told what to do, they were also told that there was an invisible, magical princess named Princess Alice sitting in the chair watching them. The experimenter left the room, and one by one, these little children come in. They throw the ball at the dartboard, and none of them cheat. And even though it's with children, this study was designed to show that when there is this supernatural element, when we feel we're being watched, when we feel that our consequences will have actions and that we can't get away with anything, human beings are more likely to follow the rules, to be good, to act as though we are being watched. Now, of course, these are little children. This is only a science experiment. This isn't exactly a case of right and wrong, as it's just this little experiment. But there is an undeniable aspect that when we have extra reasons to be good, we are going to be more likely to do good things. And when religion is really positive and beneficial, it is helping us be better people. It is helping us be more trusting of the universe, what happens in our lives, and to not be so worried all the time, because we have this faith that everything will work out, that if it doesn't, it's for a reason, and it always has a purpose. So in all of these aspects, religion has innumerable benefits. There are some downsides, as we have seen from a million holy wars in our history, as we have seen from countless acts of violence, division, and prejudice in our world. And so it's just important to remember a bit of humility with our own beliefs, to remember that yesterday's religions are today's mythologies, and that no matter what, a beautiful metaphor, a beautiful story with an important lesson, especially ones that happened thousands of years ago, that the truth of these stories are unknowable, and to always maintain that mystery, that sense of not knowing. So it doesn't mean loosening our faith, but it means we stay open to this infinite universe, that we remember that our faith is one of thousands, and that we remember the unity of all life over the labels that can divide us. I've personally, in my life, seen many cases where people are really suffering from the loss of a loved one or from some other calamity in their lives because they were told by someone that if you are good, if you pray, if you do this or that, that only good things will happen to you. And so when we tell people a story that is not based in reality, this is what often leads to those crises of faith. This is when people's worlds become shattered. When we tell people that they just didn't pray hard enough, or they weren't good enough, or their past lives' karma was why they deserved some catastrophe in their life. Because that is a danger. When we build our whole lives around an identity, around a belief, that if it doesn't align with reality, it can shatter our entire worldview. And we can not just suffer the loss of a loved one, but we suffer the realization that we have no understanding of this universe that we thought we were in and that we thought we knew. And this is really where spirituality comes in handy and really can bring about this positive change and transformation without that attachment to a story or an idea of how things should be. Because spirituality is only based on what we each experience for ourselves, what we test out and we see that is true for us. There is no story to believe. There is no leap of faith necessary, except in your own ability to come to your own truth. And religion really can be the doorway to get there, because spirituality is the realization that being good has innumerable benefits on its own, that gratitude and love are the highest aspirations we can have. And religion can be the signpost leading us towards these realizations. We can all meditate in a cave for years and decades, and we will all ultimately come to the same truth and realization. And these truths are the ones that the sages have passed down to us so that they can point us in the right direction as well. And there is no separation between any organized religion and any organized system of spirituality, because it takes a faith to start that path and to go down that journey. And one of my Buddhist meditation teachers told me that when Buddhism began, for the first 400 years, it actually stuck to the real teachings. And it was just spiritual. It was about meditation and simply to observe the in-breath and out-breath. And that after about 400 years, as it grew and grew, it turned into a business and a religion. And they started building giant golden statues of the Buddha. They said, instead of meditating, you know what, just say this prayer, say this mantra, and you'll be saved. And so it followed the same thing. Instead of giving people what they needed in order to attract customers, it started to give people what they want. And what they wanted was that pretty story, that easy ritual. And in many ways, not everywhere, but in many ways, in many places, Buddhism just replaced the other religion. Now, there are many Buddhist traditions that do stick to those original teachings, that do keep meditation at the forefront, that do really stick to the Buddha's words. But any institution, any organization is going to need to grow. It's going to need to survive. And it will need to keep its practitioners, to some degree, dependent on the institution. And I don't even say this in a negative way, because thanks to these institutions enduring, these teachings have been passed down, and we are able to get massive benefits from these incredible people who, for the most part, have simply sat in stillness and in silence so that they can observe the nature of the human mind and get to the core of suffering and illuminate the pathway out of suffering. Ultimately, that is what we are looking for, the way out of suffering. And there are many paths to reaching that self-actualization, that steady presence of love in our lives. For many people, it is religion. It is devotion and worship and rituals and ceremonies. And they are incredibly powerful tools. And they don't have to be separate paths either. We can combine these paths. We can combine the path of devotion with the path of selfless service to others, with the path of meditation and practice, with the path of learning and understanding these philosophies and principles of the human mind and the way to live a good life that we gain from reading scripture and sacred texts. And these pathways are like the many different trails leading to the top of the mountain. And every single person's path will be slightly different, but they all reach the same place. This isn't even just a personal journey, because there is an evolutionary advantage which can even explain why cultures all over the world believe in the supernatural, believe in dimensions beyond our own, whether it is spirits or God or gods or Mother Nature and the spirit of the elements. Because these stories unite cultures, and they help us create a bigger, stronger tribe than we would have if we stuck to our small tribes of 100 people or so. And so they gave way to civilization. They gave way to entire nations, caring for the elderly and the sick and the poor through these unifying values, stories, and identities. Personally, I grew up not very religious, a little religious, learned a few of the basic prayers and did Sunday school and all of that. But probably when I was about 13, 14, and I heard about these stories in the Bible that just sounded too unbelievable to me, I started to have doubts, and I really started to question. And from about 13 to probably 30, I was mostly an atheist, maybe an atheist to agnostic, at the disappointment of my parents, I'm sure. But it was just too hard for me to believe. You know, they teach these fantastical stories, and they don't preface with, we think this may have happened. If there is a God, he would say this. You know, they just said, God said this happened. And no one really explained to me that maybe it's a metaphor, maybe it's a poetic example of something real. And I was a very literal kid, so it was really, accept it or leave it. And so I really left it for a long time. And it wasn't until much later when I started to have a lot of spiritual experiences that I finally realized the truth in it. And I recognized the truth in all religions. And I really became an everything religion. I devoured the sacred texts of all the major faiths. And I was even hungry for more than that. I explored remote tribes and villages and their spiritualities and religions. And I would even say that I'm everything and nothing still, because at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't have proof. So for me, I have incorporated and adopted every single faith that I have found. And I also have no idea. I just take what I find to be beneficial. I take the oneness with all living beings over any division. I cherish the stories and their wisdom. I thank all the gods and the universe. And I love every single aspect of my reality and this existence. Because to me, that is honoring God or the universe or creation. Because it's all one. The divisions, the dualities, are the illusion. The beautiful illusion we get to spend a lifetime exploring. But everything I perceive exists within my mind. This is simply the conclusion I've come to after spending 10,000 hours with my eyes closed and just watching my mind. Each of us are a mirror. We see the world looking at us, yet we create the image. We are just projecting the world back onto itself, seeing only our own reflection. Whatever we wish to believe, we can believe. And when there is a beneficial belief, we can adopt it. We can create these beliefs. They are not something we are born with. We can believe we are just these physical bodies and feel that we are in risk and danger of death and oblivion, or we can feel that we are eternal and protected and looked after, and that this universe is not some cosmic trick or joke being played on us, but that the magic of the stars and the birds and the trees are the evidence that we do live in a loving universe that is designed for us. We can see how everything is interconnected and related, and how the good we do comes back into our lives tenfold when it is done truly selflessly, without that expectation for gain. We can see, when we look deeply, how when we act in a shady way, we suspect everyone of being shady, and people act the way you treat them. And when we see the God or the oneness in everyone, when we see their potential, they naturally are more likely to align with that potential. It is just that act of looking up to someone that they don't want to let us down. And when we look down on someone, they feel smaller and behave accordingly. And so ultimately, all religion points to these eternal truths that we can find for ourselves. And when done right, they enrich our spirit. And that spirit is who we truly are. That whether you realize it or not, you are a spiritual person, because you are a spiritual being. If we were just these physical bodies then we wouldn't die until our entire body decayed. But when that spirit leaves, that is when we stop saying that we are the body, because that is not who we are. And spirituality is really just acknowledging that field from which all life and matter emerged, where all the separateness are one, where all division is love. And it is that changeless, formless, eternal, and infinite dimension that all paths lead, and where peace, love, and lasting happiness exist. And we know, we don't have to believe, we know it is there. We know it is fundamental to our existence, because we see that space from which all stuff arises from. We hear the silence from which all sound can emerge. We see that time has no beginning and no end, that this universe is infinite, and how our consciousness creates the universe. While religion is full of stories and practices to help us reach this truth, spirituality is the awareness and recognition of this truth. Thanks for listening. 2 quick announcements. If you go to eastwesticism.org, you will now see a page under resources, which has a ton of free material on screen addiction and help with any kind of tech addiction, whether it is online news, social media, gaming, gambling, or online shopping. You can find a lot of my teachings there. And if you happen to get my recent book, Digital Ego, please make sure to go to Amazon and leave a review, as this is really how countless people will be able to find this book and get the help they need in this tech ubiquitous world we live in. We all need technology. It can really enhance our lives and bring great value to our lives and help us succeed and create even connections online and in person. But there are also very powerful algorithms and features that are designed to keep us addicted. And so I hope that book, Digital Ego, I hope that free resources page at eastwesticism.org can help you bring some balance, peace, and freedom from these screens. Much love. You have been listening to Path to Peace with Todd Perlmutter. Being here and putting in this important and noble work is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself and others. If you found this podcast even a little helpful, please make sure to leave a review so it can reach others who may be in need. And remember, the path to peace starts with a single step.